What's going on, Imperials? It's Emperor Cubone here. Welcome to the brand new year. Not that long ago, we looked at how Pokémon types might be able to pull off all having an immunity to another type, and that was pretty fun. But some comments said that we should go deeper. What if all of the types had other kinds of immunities, like ones that are already built into the game, such as how fire types can't be burned, or ice types can't be frozen, electric types can't be paralyzed, and poison types can't be poisoned. But in-battle status conditions aren't the only things that have immunities against them, like how grass types for a while now have been immune to powder moves. You know, stun spore, poison powder, all of that stuff. There are other ways to paralyze or poison grass types, but not through any of those powder moves, which is pretty specific, but it's better to be immune to them than not. Same with dark types being immune to prankster, not falling for any of those priority-based tricks. And probably my favorite one of these, ghost types are fully immune to trapping, which makes total sense because you can't contain a spirit that can phase through walls. So how can we use that same logic to find status immunities for all of the rest of the types? For instance, one that makes a ton of sense to me is the rock type being immune to flinching. I get having flinching as a mechanic in the game, I'm not complaining about it, but I also think back in the early days they would have said, well, rock is the sturdiest type around since steel wasn't a thing yet, so they should not be able to be interrupted. So that means an Onyx could both bind you into place while being immune to it. That flows really well, and while it may sound scary to have a stealth rocker who's immune to fake out to start the battle, in the long run it's really not that different because while they won't flinch, rock type attacks are notoriously easy to fail. So it really just gives you one free miss. So I think if we're gonna give every type an immunity outside the type chart, the unflinching rock lines up perfectly. Now, one of the more rage-inducing sub-status effects is infatuation, where a Pokémon falls in love with the opponent and is more often than not immobilized by love. However, I think it would have been a great idea if they had made Fairy immune to infatuation when they introduced them in Gen 6. I mean, they had a lot more time to think about it than any of the other types, but the Fairies being immune to forced love works for me, as they would see right through that since they deal in either creating real emotions or draining their life force with love. So Fairy getting out of being immobilized by love works, and really is a massive help for them because they have the largest pool of monogendered Pokemon lines, making them a bit predictable if infatuation is your go-to strategy. But now we'll look at the other most common substatus condition with confusion. Nobody really likes to hurt themselves in their confusion, because it seems to happen all the time when it's on you, so wouldn't it be great if the bug type were immune to that altogether? People mentioned in the comments last time that bugs could be immune to psychic outright, on the basis of them not being very smart and their naturally tiny brains. The whole type might be a bit much, but I could believe it if they were too dumb to be confused. Your mind games won't work here because they have none to speak of. Or maybe they just have so many legs that they get tangled and can't even reach to hurt themselves? We're getting a bit further away now, but I still think bugs not being confused would be quite fitting. And at that point, it would probably be a bit into the game before you even know confusion is a thing, because bug is so prominent early on in most of the regions. But since confusion commonly comes from psychic, let's talk about it now, and how it would be pretty great if the psychic type were immune to disabling any of their attacks. It's a very common tactic to have a Pokemon use Disable or Torment or Taunt to put the foe off balance by restricting their choices and disrupting the strategies they had intended to use, which can definitely be annoying, but it would seem to track for me if psychic types could just ignore all of that by nature of their ESP, or their telepathy letting them know that those deceptive schemes are incoming and avoid them in the first place, or just by being so in tune with their own psyche that they can overcome that mental block. It is fairly niche, but I think it fits well for a psychic type to be able to keep their focus and attacking when none of the others can. So those ones all fit pretty perfectly to me, but we still need to cover the last actual status condition in sleep. Currently no type is immune to sleep, but which one of them would work best? Well, of the remaining options, I'd probably say fighting. One could argue that with their advanced training, they can still perform combat techniques even if they are a little groggy. And it's not like you couldn't still freeze or burn any fighting Pokemon, so I don't think them staying awake is too game-breaking. And their discipline overcoming their tiredness is a solid excuse if you ask me. So since there's not a slumber type to be obvious like all of the others, I think fighting could be the culprit. Although maybe it should be Ghost, I think that could work too, but they've already got something to be immune to outside of the type chart. Another that I think is quite good is the flying type being immune to target alterations. Sometimes in battle, certain moves can manipulate the targeting of Pokemon attacks like Follow Me so that you don't hit the Pokemon you intended to. However, with flying, they can gain so much altitude on the foe that any Rage Powder wouldn't cause them to lose their target. And this is not the only way to affect aim in Pokemon. Moves like Detect, where they can dodge, should probably also fall into this camp. Because why would flying Pokemon miss anything when they've got the high ground? They could see anything coming from way up there, and then it would be over. Now, I'm not saying that their accuracy could never fall or be affected, that could still be a thing. But as far as outside moves that change the targeting of Pokemon attacks, I think flying would easily be above it all. Okay, one that I thought of was ground being immune to lifting, because it makes sense for ground to hug tightly to the earth and not be whisked into the air, but that's really narrow in focus, not very useful, and really only possible through kinesis, so instead maybe we could widen it to ground being immune to any forced switch outs as well. Those are a lot more common, and the Pokemon that are one with the ground beneath them shouldn't really be able to be uprooted in any form. That might be a bit overpowered to have moves like Whirlwind fail, but hey, sometimes just running away fails too, so it wouldn't be that different, and ground staying put seems like a no-brainer to me. Now, another that I think fits on a logical level is probably Steel being immune to critical hits. Now, I realize what I just said, but stick with me here. Steel is even sturdier than rock, so it follows that if you bashed your head into the same steel wall over and over, that you would never really get a special lucky hit that hurts it more than you. Now, yes, I'm aware that Steel is the most defensive type in the game, and blocking out any crits might be a bit too much on top of that, but honestly, I'm not too worried about the game balance. I'm just trying to figure out which mechanics could conceivably fit with every type. And Steel being so unyielding that it never suffers a critical hit just clicks too well to pass up, even if it's probably a bit overpowered. However, Normal seems a little harder. I mean, what special qualities could they even have? Well, we could lean into that and have their lack of assets be their defining trait by making it impossible to have another Pokemon change their type. This can happen a number of ways, like with Soak, Trick or Treat, or Magic Powder, bet you forgot that move existed. But what if normal Pokemon were just so simple that you couldn't ever make them anything besides that normal? It makes sense to me for them to just shrug off a Forest's Curse and carry on being too bland to fall prey to those tactics. You could even stretch that to ability changes too if you wanted, because that does happen a lot as well, but then you would have to go both ways for even the positive ones, like Regigigas being totally unaffected by neutralizing gas, so we don't have to do both of them, but making Normal oblivious to any type alterations is a solid way to go if you ask me. So we need one for Dragon as well, and I'm thinking that we could include Curse here, since that is technically another substatus condition that can be cured by recalling the Pokemon. However, the Curse condition is only possible from Ghost types, since Curse works very differently for everyone else. So the dragons need more than just Curse, which means I'll bolster it to include Nightmare and even Perish Song as well, to pretty much negate any otherworldly damage over time effects. I could just see dragons being tied to some ancient mysterious magic that makes them immune to such tricks like a measly curse. But even more simply, do you really think a dragon is gonna have a nightmare? Or just go die because somebody sang it a song? No, dragons do their own thing, so I can easily see them stubbornly ignoring these various damaging techniques. So, for those keeping track at home, that just leaves Water, which was honestly pretty difficult to nail down, and that did surprise me considering the other starter types already have such immunities. However, I'm wondering if we could say that Water should be immune to explosions. I mean, we already have an ability for this in Damp that prevents exploding moves, but there's only like 4 detonating moves in the entire series, so that can't be all there is to it. So I'm thinking that this could extend to various bomb-style moves as well. Once again, we do have an ability for this already, so bombs are a legitimate category already identified in the game. But it also fits with just about every movie we've ever seen, where to get rid of a bomb they drop it into some water. The liquid rather successfully tempers the effects of the explosions. So I would think perhaps water types could remain unfazed by something similar happening in their presence, and simply dismiss moves like a Sludge Bomb or an Octazooka. Even though they're not all made of water, they could still easily create a protective barrier between them and the explosion. Maybe not for this one, I'm open to suggestions, but I think another kind of attack category inventory, like the powder moves that we already have, would be appropriate to use for another type at some point, so why not go ahead and have it be water? But those are the status conditions and mechanics I believe each Pokémon type would be immune to if they had implemented such ideas for all of the elements in the game. Which types do you think should have additional immunities? Let me know down in the comments. Also, be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And until next time, stay grounded.